Okay, so I'm just working on getting set up here. It's a beautiful day to have a beautiful day, everybody. And I'm happy to have you here. So tonight we are talking about key number 5, vocabulary. Now I'm trying to just kind of arrange things here so it all just flows a little bit better here. I'm recording on YouTube as well here. So I'll be trying to monitor both. Anyway, let's see. There we go. Okay. So tonight we're talking about key 5 vocabulary, the magic of words. There is no accident that tonight lines up with the full moon in Aries. And today the color I've aligned with the topic of vocabulary, you would think would go with the blue, your throat chakra, but I'm going more with the yellow solar plex energy because our power source is truly from our center. And so when we speak powerfully, we're speaking from our center, our sacral chakra, which really represents that personal power and confidence. Now, if you've been along for the ride, we've talked about the other 4 keys up until this point. But now we're talking about vocabulary. Now, with that, just to kind of clear my own energy going into this, because I'm moving from mortgage structure, finances in the day to now we're talking about more quantum physics, that we really kind of create our own, not kind of, we do create our own reality. And so with that, we'll be talking about vocabulary and are we using words of decrease? Are we using words of increase? How are we viewing the world and using our words to shape our reality? Now, when it comes to vocabulary, using vocabulary and words within the context of communication, it can really give you some powerful insights and connection with people, fields, professions that maybe you don't know much about. So we're going to talk about ways to use your words to learn more. The reality is each word has its own range of sound, frequency, meaning, and that meaning is derived from whoever is speaking their definition for said word. So we'll talk about that, how to utilize it in business, in your personal life to gain connection with others. And apologies, I'll be looking both places because I've got my YouTube channel up here too. But anyway, so to blast this thing off, right? Have any of you, like, with kids these days, okay? Have you ever heard a teenager say things like Riz or skibbity or what's the other expressions? I know some of you guys have words that your kids or teenagers you see are using. No one? Nothing? Okay, well, for me, so I did a whole little interview with my nieces, my nephews, and my own children. I've got a daughter that's almost 14 this year. And so it's been really interesting to hear this new age terminology. So with the new slang of the world, you've recently heard, and if you're anything like me, it makes you feel old as shit, because you're like, wait a second, there's a whole new terminology. Like Riz, for example, means charisma. Like, it has it now means seduction and smooth talking versus just the original word is charisma. They've I want to say dumbed it down, for a lack of better expression, dumbed it down to Riz, and now the slang meaning of it is more of that seductive, yeah, smooth talking. I've got Riz, you hear all the kids say it. The other one is skibbity, which it was originally off of like a goofy meme, some guy coming out of the toilet. Oh boy, I don't know what I just did. Sorry, guys. Um, anyway, so the one with skibbity was originally based off of a goofy meme with this guy sitting in a toilet coming out. And now it has a total different cultural reference. And the best I can pin on it, I'm vegan vampire. Okay, that's interesting. So when it comes to all these different words, like another one, bet or no cap, like that means you're not lying. And because we've put in words, vibrations, sound, meaning to this, it has caught fire. Okay. And it's going through all the kids have these different meanings to it, and different groups of kids have different meanings towards these words. And a lot of kids don't even understand what the root word of what they're saying is, which is fine. That's the beauty about life and words and vocabulary, especially for us in our middle years, where we've had a lifetime of, we learn these original words from our school teachers who get the definitions, and then through our own history, our own past, we filter what the meaning, what the definition is. And so we when we're in communication with somebody, we must take into account what their definition or perspective is on a said word, or what it means, and what the energy is behind it, what the meaning is. And so a good practice when you're talking to people is to ask them, what does that mean to you? What's your definition of XYZ? For example, like if you think about the word love, okay? Any of you listening, like what does the word love mean to you? Because through different lenses, the word love means a multitude of things. So it can mean either that agape form of love, which is the unconditional form of love. Sorry, I've got like ashes all over from my Palo Santo here. And then there's the philia or friendship type of love. And then there's the eros type of love, the romantic type of love. Thank you, Talked and Loaded. So each expression of somebody saying, I love you, that can mean Ophelia. Yeah. So that can mean completely different context to someone. Like, for example, I am that person that I tell everyone in my life that's of significance that I love them. Like when I leave them, sometimes I slip it to like mortgage clients on accident. It's like, love you, bye, because I do genuinely have agape love for any living being. I mean, we're all really interconnected, and so that love that I have for everyone else, it doesn't matter who you are, I have love for everyone. So when I say I love you, that doesn't mean I'm romantically in love with everyone, that there's that eros type of love. And so I'm curious for you guys if love me what that means to you when someone says I love you. I've noticed because I am that more, out there. I love everyone. I'm a hugger. Not everyone is that way. Some people are super uncomfortable with expressions of love. And again, this goes back to what is the person's history? Who are you speaking to? And we really need to take a step back when we're in communication with someone, especially when we're trying to understand them or learn them or where they're coming from. Because when we can tune into their perspective, their history, get their definition, the word means to them, it can really give us a lot of information to give put us on more of a level playing ground, so the perspective or the energy or the vibration or meaning that they have attached to the word. And yes, I agree. Movies and TV, music has distorted the meaning of love. Absolutely. Um, and this is part of why I'm on here talking about these different forms of communication, because so many times we get caught up in our own meaning of a word that someone and this is where like emails and texts are the worst form of communication, because you don't have body language, you don't have tone, you're going merely off of the word and the definition as its own, filtering it through your own perspective, your own history of what the word means or what this person's saying to you could mean. And so through that, we tend to attach stories. And so this is where asking for clarity, asking for that insight, what does that mean to you? Give me more information. What is, for example, the word love? What does that mean to you when you say you love me? And I have had people ask me that, where I've had to explain that. Or if I've openly expressed love, especially with the other gender, it can be this invitation of like, oh, if you love me, does that mean you want to be with me? And it's like, no, no, no. So always think of the context and the history of the person you're speaking with. Now, if you don't really know them that well, it may be harder to know what their meaning may be behind their words. And that's where you ask. And that's the beautiful dance we do with learning others, and really by us tuning in and asking others what their definition of something, people love to tell you what they know about. So this works especially well too. For example, like if you're going to the mechanic and maybe some different things are wrong with your car, or maybe you're wanting to go to a mechanic shop and learn the trade yourself. Well, when a mechanic, someone you're wanting to understand their perspective, what something means, maybe you've only read in the books what, I don't know, an alternator means. Like that's what this means. I don't know why that came up, but here we go. Um, I would say Lowe's, Lowe's. I would say Lowe's over Home Depot. Anyway, so with a mechanic, if you're wanting to know what you're talking about. First of all, this especially works, and I've used this as a female, either buying cars or going to get my car fixed. Okay. Because a lot of those different scenarios you can be taken advantage of, or as a woman going into those fields, I can be seen as like, oh, she doesn't know what she's talking about. So basically, I could get more money out of her, right? I could tell her there's something wrong with her car that's totally not wrong with her car. So something smart to do would be to do a little research, look up, here's different things that it could be. So already I've got terminology, even if I only know a baseline of what it means, if I can assess that using the verbiage of a mechanic who knows their shit, right? Someone that's possibly been doing this their whole life. So I go in there with a couple key words, key phrases that will align me as somebody knowledgeable to a mechanic. So if I go in there and I'm like, hey, my car was doing XYZ, and I believe it's the alternator because of this. What's your understanding about how the alternator would work? Or something like that, where you're coming in with a little sprinkle of like, I know what the hell I'm talking about, even though I don't know shit about what I'm talking about. And then, whoa, I think my mom's here again. And then from there, you've got a little bit of in with the sense of I somewhat know what I'm talking about. And then you can lean on their profession and ask them to explain in based off their professional experience what they believe. By doing this, you're connected that A, you're not completely oblivious. This person can't take advantage of you because you have a general knowing of how things work, which could lead them to believing that I'm much more of an expert than they realized just based off appearance. Okay, so this is where our words within different professions, this can be with your doctors too. Many times I see with doctors where a lot of people just lead their doctor to give them some sort of diagnosis, like or that's a whole other freaking can of worms. But nonetheless, if you do a little bit of research, especially if it's in something you don't know, especially if it's something that's going to cost you money, time, energy, it's good for you to educate yourself, plant a few subtle words that this professional is going to cue in that, oh, this person might know. And then you lean on their knowledge base, their history and understanding of whatever the topic is. Now, this can work in um no. Well, actually, Chuck, yes, I am asking you to research life. And it's not so much about researching as raising your awareness, raising your it's leveling up, upgrading your identity is essentially when you can what's the saying? Knowledge is power. Really positioning yourself as the knowledgeable one and using words, if I'm sure this happens to you guys too, where you go out in life and you learn a new word. I'm trying to think of a new word I've recently learned. Does anyone have one that they've recently learned? Um, so when we learn new words and we can start infusing them into our practice, especially if you're someone that you do sell things, you do online content creation to sell stuff, it's important that you know certain things to attract your ideal client, your ideal avatar, if you will. And so using your words to attract those people, using your words to attract the reality that you want is critical in this. Now, to drop a little bit of ancient wisdom here, in many of the ancient cultures that I've studied, words weren't just sounds. They were spells that shaped reality. There's a lot, even like in Egyptian and even indigenous cultures, where certain names or nicknames were given, but only in sacred moments, or even in Egyptian times where like they had the headdress, and that was almost like to me, like a different identity or more of a their sacred essence. Okay. Um, And yes, so Chuck, we have talked about body language. You should definitely follow along in this series because we're doing all 9 keys of communication. We're on 5 now. And I'm doing a bonus key, which is energy mastery, which will do a whole process with breath work, somatic therapy, body movement, stuff like that. Anyway, so back to ancient cultures. In Egyptian, believing basically, if you knew someone or you believed that you only knew someone truly by knowing their true name, and that gave you power within that person. It gave you a deeper connection. Now that's the same in a lot of the different indigenous cultures that I've studied or traveled or interviewed, so to speak. One of the Hebrew traditions holds that words shape existence, that the universe itself was spoken into and from our divine utterances, is the words, divine utterances. So essentially, that we again created our reality based on our words, based on what we're speaking, based on as a collective, what energy, frequency, meaning we have assigned to a certain word. Um, Now this could like really turn the envelope on a lot of like really deep stuff about like we're in the matrix and literally like everything physical, tangible is constructed in our mind, mentalism, which I'll be unpacking all that later down the road too. So if this shit interests you, probably better follow along. Now even when it comes to the Egyptian times, like the god Ra had a secret name that only he knew. And Isis used magic to learn it. So there's stories about names and oh, see, I swear to God, like whenever I record, I have some sort of a spirit above me and I feel like it might be my mom. So sorry that my camera keeps doing that. Um but anyway, if it is you, mom, thank you. Um so with that, so I do actually have some Egyptian, and it's interesting both times I brought up Egyptian, whoop, went up. Like, did you guys catch that or was it just me? Um and loaded that God spoke through words. Now, oh my God, this is wild. Okay. Um anyway, I love mothers. So I feel like I'm talking about power source, confidence. Since my mom passed, there's been a lot of support, I guess, energetically and spiritually of her showing up and being like, you need to be seen. You need to freaking share what you know, which is really freaking odd because in my mom's earth life, it was very much like, because I left a church that was, well, the Latter day Saints, Mormons. I was Mormon well, in my younger years. And I left the church at 14 and my teenage years were a struggle. But before she passed, she shared how proud she was of me and that I lead for humanity. Like every time I travel to other countries, I'm doing humanitarian work, which is totally my mom to a T. She did a lot of humanitarian projects, work, energy healing. And so it's interesting though, because she really did all of that through the container of religion. And I've done all of that through the container of spirituality and just being a good human. And anyway, I'm just sharing this because I feel like it's my mom. And I'm like, yes, mom, I'm here being seen. I'm here being seen, sharing the message. And anyway, so in ancient, I mean, it's so easy to find if you really just look a little bit, like there's so much information about vocabulary and names, and especially the ancient times, where I truly believe, like medicinally, spiritually, like just energetically, all these processes, we really need to go back to the ancient time, ancient wisdom. And it's interesting because a lot of the stuff that I'm going through within this container of the 9 keys of communication, I'm really infusing with the ancient wisdom of things. And I've been going back through and studying just some different books and principles and laws, and it's wild to me how much everything really does correlate and everything really is connected. And if we go back and study these, ancient ways, ancient medicines, practices like yoga, breath work, connecting to your body, connecting to the elements, using the tools that were given to us that are free and accessible to literally all of us, but we're so disconnected. And yeah, so anyway, that stuff sparks me up. Ancient wisdom, anything quantum truths, like there's so much. There's so much to share with the world, and that's why I'm here. So, thank you, Mom, if that was you, for showing up. And I feel like it was her. Doves have been showing up a lot as well. So, anyway, um, the reality is the pattern that we see across time, space, the time and space continuum is the progression, the constant evolution of language, just like with, charisma back in my people's day. If you're in your 30, 40, late 30s, 40s, charisma is what we used to say. Now, new age kids is riz, and it's got more of a slang meaning to it. Just like in the Bible, it says, if a man lay, or something about like, if, and I'm sorry if I slaughter this, but something about like, if a man lays with another man, he shall be stoned. Now, if you put that in 2025 language, that makes it sound like if y'all are laying together, you better get high. You better be high. You better get a little stoned. So, what is the context of the documents, the books that we're studying, and what was the energy attached to those words at the time they were written compared to now, today's meaning that's attached to things? Um, so it's quite interesting when you really just even compare like today, what kids are saying to some of these old transcripts that I've been reading, that it's like old biblical type terminology, where I'm like, so what I'm aiming to do here post this series is actually start rolling out some of those in more new age vocabulary, kind of translating it through a new age lens, if that means or makes sense. Because a lot of this stuff, like people aren't getting these books that have this infinite intelligence and truth, and it all comes from, yes, written word. But to me, a lot of these holy books, we'll call it, they are channels. They are somebody's history, someone's experience, and there's a lot of wisdom, like we're all super curious about like what's going on in the world, like where did we come from? Who are we? What are we doing here? And literally, if you just like go down a few rabbit holes of like quantum physics, anything like law of attraction, spirituality, like it's not, it doesn't take that long to stumble upon like some serious ancient wisdom that we could all take notes from and really infuse in our lives. So I'm going to be doing that, taking it upon myself, because I've really infused my life with a lot of these practices from a young age because I really do love learning and seeking knowledge, wisdom, power, and not so much power to like I want to dominate the world, but power through the heart space, power through pure channels. And when we can use our words, number one, as a so I call it when we're speaking, we're either in two channels, one or the other. We're using words of increase or we're using words of decrease. So words of increase, or let's do words of decrease first so I can show you the difference. Like words of decrease would be, let's just say like something shitty happened at work, a coworker something, and your outlook on it is like, "Oh, this always happens to me. Now I have to fix this. Now I've got to take my time. Why is this happening to me? Why does this person?" We're starting to attach some sort of a story or a poor, pitiful me type thing. Now, if say this thing happens and we can look at it through obviously observe if we're having a negative reaction to something. But if we look at it through what is this trying to show me? What opportunity is there here for me? Usually, I've noticed more often than not, it comes down to communication or something unexpressed or an opportunity for growth. And so, another common thing, and I'm not sure if any of this is true for you, but it sure is true for me. When we say I am, what follows is so important. And my bowl just, I don't know if you heard it go ping, is everything that follows I am is specifically what you are asking for from the universe in this moment. And you are claiming that as your identity. So when you say, I am sick, I am tired, you are only vibrating out more that you are those things. Now, when we can reframe it, to be more like, my body's asking me for some rest. My energy levels I need some nourishment. I could use some nourishment. Um and just see, so for anyone listening, if you think of something that you're constantly, maybe even something happened today. A lot of people just got off work. Is there something that you're viewing it through and telling yourself, whether verbally or in your mind, in a way of words that are decreasing versus words that are nourishing, are building? Now, when we can speak in words of increase versus words of decrease, you'll notice that your life starts to transform. How you view things starts to transform. When an obstacle is presented, you stop looking at it as something to like fight against, but rather something showing you a choice. I have a choice to continually in my old way of saying words of decrease and being negative Nelly, or I can use words of increase and be positive Patty. And although, because I've had people, I am that positive Patty, and sometimes it drives people nuts. And I do have a hard time when people are blasting me with negativity. I'm just like, do you hear yourself? Do you hear the words you are saying? Now, for the unconscious human, usually that's met with defensiveness, especially if it's a sibling, because they're like, you don't know. But it's like, as you start playing with this and observing yourself and how you're speaking, are you speaking from a place of positivity, building, creation? Or are you speaking from a place of destruction, of reaction, of defensiveness? Because the reality is, anytime that we get defensive or we're in fear, it's our body telling us, "Ooh, I don't like this," or "Ooh, it's reminding me of a story associated over here." So when we can pause ourselves from either projecting, rejecting someone else, and lean in to go, "What's here for me? What is my opportunity to grow? What is my opportunity to enhance my life, my experience? What is my opportunity to choose the positive versus the negative? The words of creation versus words of reaction?" Because the reality is, we've got the law, different laws like law of attraction that we've all heard about. And that goes way beyond just our verbal words. And so when we want positive things in our life and maybe we're too caught up in negative patterns or negative thinking, it can I hope this video perhaps, turns the envelope for a few people to recognize within yourself. Like, you don't even have to share it in the chat, but like, think about it. Think about your day today. Think about how you communicate with your coworkers. Think about how you communicate with your kids. When you get home, is it like, "Oh, I got to do the dishes," like, and are we like negative about things? Or are we like, "Hey kids, isn't it awesome we got to eat today? We do get to clean up. So let's all clean up together before we move on to XYZ." Putting a positive spin on anything. But if us as the leaders of our own life, especially if you're a parent and you're like doom and gloom and have a negative attitude about everything, especially chores, especially obligations, especially responsibilities, your kids are going to probably follow suit. And so the more we can be observant of our own responses, and that's like the simplest test. And what I want to leave with everyone is, pay attention to if you're speaking words of increase or decrease. Are you increasing the vibe, or are you really like killing the vibe by your words? We all know that person that comes into a room and maybe like it's good vibes, the words shared between everyone, it's awesome. And then that one person walks in the room and they're just like doom and gloom about a project. I don't remember the science on this, but I was listening to a podcast or it was something along those lines. And it said, when you have a group of like creators or salespeople, or you're working on a project, like they did a study, I don't know how many people, but over, I think it was 80% of the groups, a large percentage of the groups, that they just placed one person in the group that was negative and just speaking words of decrease. Their project deadlines weren't met. The whole project, the team morale, everything was worse. So not only do you take down the people around you by speaking words of decrease, it lowers your chances for success. It creates a reality that you don't want versus a reality that you do want. And so use your vocabulary to open doors. If you're presented with something less than stellar, meet it with increase, not decrease. Because if something shitty happens, no one wants the negativity train to come on. And I don't know about y'all. Do any of you have like freaking teenagers? Because I swear, in the kids like schools these days, it seems like it's like a negativity battle. Like, what kid has the worst life? What kid has the worst, most cruel parents? What kid has the worst ailment? whether hurt. Not to mention, a lot of the kids are joking and actually cutting themselves. And I see this as a direct correlation to a society that is choosing to use more words of decrease versus words of increase. And I'm not blaming the kids and I'm not blaming the parents, but it's going to take all of us to rise and snap out of it. Like, no one wants to hang out with the victim all the time. No one wants to like be drugged down into a negative conversation, negative anything. But this is where that law of polarity with words, everything has a duality to it, just like fear. What's the opposite? Courage. So if we're met with a challenge, love, hate, abundance, scarcity, words of increase, words of decrease. There's a polarity balance in everything we do, and you can choose to have courage when faced with a challenge or opposition, or you can choose to be in fear. Either way, your body is going to be having a response to it. And so, if we can take action in the moment that we observe the whatever arising in us, the conflict, the ick arising in us, the fear bubbling up, we can go, hey, I hear you, I see you, but I'm choosing courage. I'm choosing to look at what is the lesson in this? What is in it for me to learn? What is in it, this opportunity for me to grow? And when we can suck the juices out of life, the lessons, and choose the law of increase, choose the positive side of that polarity, because no matter what, we're going to be feeling both. Just like love, for example. Let's talk about romantic love. Like, you can feel that romantic love, but then at points that partner may like make you feel a lot of hate or rage or like frustration, typically because expectations weren't met or some sort of a disconnect. No matter what, you're gonna get like everything ends. Change is the only constant. It's not this or that. It's not love or hate. It's love and hate. It's fear and courage. So it's not about saying, "Oh, I'm going to ignore these negative thoughts." But if you find that you've done this self-test and gone, are the words I'm saying increasing or decreasing? And they're decreasing, you've just caught yourself in a pattern that now you can snap yourself out of to create a better pathway forward, a more aligned pathway. Because what you, when you make that choice within your own system to go, no, no, I'm not going down this negative pathway over here. I'm staying the course right here in my center of who I know I am and what I want. And let your words reflect creation. Let your words reflect what you do want, not what you don't want. So many times we're met with something less than stellar and we get so caught up in the poor me, or why did this happen for me, or oh, not another bill, or instead of what's in it for me to learn here. Why are these patterns? Why is negativity? Why is sickness, illness, whatever it could be, still coming up? It's wild to think about. And especially when you go on these deep dives to really learn yourself and recognize these patterns, That's the greatest tool that really anyone could give you, is to be aware of your words, your thoughts. Are they positive? Are they negative? Are you somebody that gets off, so to speak, on shaming yourself, on feeling horrible? Or are you ready to snap out of it and go, no, I'm going to choose positivity. I'm going to choose an upgraded avatar and identity. I'm going to choose to use my words in a more knowledgeable, powerful, intentional way. Because language and vocabulary can both clarify and confuse. Just like the whole love story I was saying. A single word can either unite or divide people, a person, a conversation. And so when we can use all these tools we've been discussing all in one big happy snuggle puddle and go out into the world and communicate through more of a authentic space, and look at problems not as a problem but more of a challenge. When we're met with opposition and we're faced with a challenge, most people are like, "Oh my god, what am I going to do?" And we start holding our breath. We fear the conversation that we need to have, instead of up leveling, upgrading our identity and going, I'm not going to choose to go down this negative pathway that's going to make me sick. Maybe I'm not going to be able to eat. Maybe I won't be able to sleep because I'm all up in my shit about it. Instead of looking at everything as a problem, we look at it as, wow, the world is mirroring back from whatever I've been creating subconsciously or consciously, is now showing up right now, and it's something opposing me. I don't want it. And when we face everything as a problem, we're going against the flow, we're going against friction. And if the shit keeps showing up in your world, it's probably because you're on that words of decrease train. And it starts with your inner thoughts, but when they're projecting outward through our verbal words, and we're just willy-nilly word vomiting negativity, we're going to get more of that. But when we can reframe any of our problems as, here's a challenge that I get to solve. Here is something that's showing up for me that I get to figure out, and I'm going to be better because of it. I know it can sound like sideways to say that. And even sometimes in my own life, like, I'm like, how am I not freaking the fuck out? Like, don't get me wrong, I definitely do freak out at just things in life. I've taken some huge losses the last couple years, but especially the last like year. And most people would probably be just like, ugh. But it's like, no, what is this teaching me? Well, I know what it's teaching me. I'm not meant to be on like this certain pathway I've been on. And I've been ignoring my call, my mission for too long. And so, because I did that, certain things are appearing in my reality, and I can meet those less than stellar things as problems, or I can meet them as a challenge. Like, okay, now what do I need to do? What do I get to do to learn from this, to move this along, to move through this? Because when you get stuck in the lower vibration or the words of decrease, it just becomes a whole freaking cycle of negativity. And especially if you're unhealed from like child wounds, you probably maybe learned these traits from a parent or a sibling, where it really is so simple to shift from words of decrease to words of increase, words of creation versus the opposite and living in reaction. Because when we're living in reaction to our life, we're only going to continually create more of it. But when we can press the pause button and go, wait, actually, what am I scared of in this moment? What do I need to happen to be able to move through this? Who do I need to talk to? And this is where that silence, the number one key we discussed, is so important. Silence with yourself so you can actually observe these things. And that's why I urge you, all of you, to really reflect on how you're using your words. What's the energy behind it? Are they uplifting or not? You know, and use the words that you do know in conversation and ask people what their definitions or understandings of certain things are. You'll be amazed to see how different so many people's perspective is. Now, tonight is the full moon. And it's interesting because looking up, the Virgo full moon meaning and all of that, and it's all about if we can't, it's essentially calling us to refine our words. Full moon, set intentions. What are you letting go of? And our words, our vocabulary is how we can tangibly create results. And so, with all of this, I challenge each of you to take a moment tonight with the energy of the full moon, whether you believe it or not. This is a completing of a cycle. And for whoever's stood by long enough, I think it's time to complete that cycle of words of decrease, of words of reaction, and shift that into words of creation and positive pathway forwards for ourselves, for our kids, for anyone we come in contact with. Because when you can be that person of light, when you can be that person that anything that happens, everything is figure outable. That's a really good response to someone, especially if you're like a fix it all kind of person. Like everyone comes to you with their problems. You just let them know everything's figure outable. What do you feel? Everyone has their own answers inside if we'll just pause long enough to listen. Quiet our structured mind, quiet our freaking the rat race going on up in here so we can actually hear ourselves. But so many times we get stuck in that fear, which is all derived from right here. Fear, courage. Get back down into your body. Quit holding it. Quit avoiding it. And face it. It's the only way through is to face it. And when we can do that, you'll see all the miracles, all the up-leveling of communication that happens simply by you shifting such a little thing. But you'll notice how much it ripples out into your whole world. And so to kind of, I guess, finish up or recap, the word awareness practice. So like we talked about, go into your world. If you're learning a new thing or learning a new trade or you need to buy something, educate yourself first with certain keywords to make yourself look like the expert so you can get yourself a better deal, but also so you can learn and ask the definition of professionals and tradespeople and learn about the things that you're actually interested in that you may have a completely different definition for. Sharing your knowledge and giving people in your world the opportunity to share their knowledge, because even if you know about something, even if you believe you're an expert on something, asking somebody else what their interpretation, what their definition is, will actually potentially enhance your perspective and your definition, and possibly give you pieces, basically pieces out in the field from the collective, reflecting back to you a different meaning. And perhaps some of you have been in life and had been using a word incorrectly for a long time, and someone had the courage to let you know you were saying it wrong. Or maybe you learned what something actually meant and then you started using it in your daily life. By using words and continually upleveling our knowledge, we can communicate out in the world and open up our receptors to receive other perspectives, opinions, and not be so rigid within our own that we miss the beauty of life. And then, yeah, next time, maybe the next 24 hours, if you run into someone that uses a common word, ask them to define it. Possibly even the word love. Whatever it might be, it could be as simple as shoe. Just play with it. Or even ask your kids, what does this word mean to you? What's your definition of this word? See what they have to say. Can be interesting. Are there any words that any of you have learned that had changed your perspective? Oh, I got to do the puzzle piece, which means I got to finish up. Oop. There we go. Y'all, that took me 3 times. Apparently I have fat fingers right now. But yeah, use this night to speak into your intentions. Virgo energy is all about the practical manifestation through words. And so you've got the energy of the stars behind you. What is the reality that you want to create? Are you speaking words of increase or decrease, whether verbally or in your own thought patterns? Because your subconscious is creating just as much as your conscious mind. And so the more we can be aware of it, the more it's going to make life a lot simpler. And then just remember the law of polarity, that everything you're feeling, even the negative emotion, has an opposite. And tune into that opposite when you're in the shadow side of things. Tune into the light side. And from there, what's your pathway to get there, to the reality that you want, to the creation, the timeline that you want to be living on? Or if you love being stuck using words of decrease and being in a victim cycle and projecting all your woes onto everyone else, you can do that too. But regardless of if you're in wherever you're living from, either you're choosing to live in that lower vibrational bracket and meeting everything with, it probably feels like this, like, oh, this happened, oh, that happened, oh, that happened. But when we can meet things with flow, when we can meet opposition with opportunity, when we can feel that fear bubbling up with us in us, and we can go, okay, what's my pathway to courage? What is the ideal outcome that I want in this situation, in this conversation? And then make your words match that. So many times our words don't match the reality that we actually do want. And so we keep just like getting the stuff we don't. So use your words wisely. Use your words to be a betterment in society and to align yourself with the life that you do want to live. Now, coming up next, the next key is tone. Because it's not just what you say, but how you say it. And so we'll be covering tone. This will be Monday. It's St. Patty's Day. may have a guest speaker. Bro Fiki might be joining, and it's actually his birthday. So we shall see if we are graced with his presence for that one. But for now, enjoy your magical weekend. Make it magical. Do your freaking cast your spells tonight. Be intentional. What do you want to happen the next 30 days? What's a challenge that's bothering you that you really need to reframe? What's something that is grinding your gears that you could shift your perspective or use your words to create change or up level your identity and tune into who and what you actually want? Play with it. Message me if you have questions. Follow along on my channel if you want to stick around for key number 5, tone. Again, that will be Monday at 5:30, going live again. You can watch a replay of this. I'm recording this on my YouTube channel as we speak as well. So if you miss part of it and you want to listen to the whole thing, you can find me on YouTube, the dash Natalia, Natalia dash Rose. Apparently there's a bunch of us Natalia Roses, and we're all into like either fitness, spirituality, body, higher frequency. But hey, I'm here for it. Maybe we need to get the Natalia Rose gang together. But nonetheless, thank you to those of you who stuck around, joined. I truly hope that you take this information out into the world. Notice when you're creating more problems for yourself or seeing things as problems versus challenges, being the victim instead of the creator. And let's go. Let's freaking go. Let's up level humanity, the earth, and let's rise together, baby. Ta-ta for now. Thank you for following along.